After my first running shoe review 8 years ago of the Asics Gel Zakara 4, I've gone on to test loads more running shoes. So today I'm bringing you guys my top 5 running shoes of all time. So welcome back to another video. I'm really excited to share my top 5 running shoes of all time. Big shout out to the Budmeister. He did a brilliant video on this a few weeks ago. He mentioned that in his comments, one of his subscribers said it'd be great to hear your top 5 shoes of all time. It was a great video, and then someone commented on one of my videos and said to me it'd be great to hear what your top 5 shoes of all time are. This has been a tough one to narrow down, but today I'm going to give you my top 5. I have 3 of those shoes here with me today, a couple I no longer have. Let's get straight into this. I'm going to reel off a list of shoes that I have tested. I've gone back through all of my running shoe reviews, my playlist, and singled out some of the ones that have been really instrumental for me in my running, some that I've really enjoyed. I'll also highlight a couple and explain why they haven't quite made the list. So let's whiz through those now. A big shout out to the Nike Pegasus Turbo 2, the Adidas Ultra Boost 19, the Saucony Endorphin Elite, the Saucony Endorphin Pro 1 and Speed 1, and to be fair, the Speed 2 as well, the Asics Nova Blast version 2, the Alpha Fly from Nike version 1, the Hoka Max 6, that was a great one, the New Balance Fuel Cell TC, the Hoka Carbon X original version, the Brooks Hyperion Tempo, and rolling back the years, the Hoka Rincon version 1. Now there were 4 in that list that were really close to making the list. The Nike Pegasus Turbo version 2 was one of them. That was a game changer when I got that shoe. I'd never tested anything like it. I can imagine now if I slipped my foot in it and ran in it, it wouldn't feel quite as special, but at the time it was magical. The Saucony Endorphin Elite version 1, what a racing shoe that is. I still hold that in high regard. Probably my second best racing shoe, maybe third, that I've ever tested. That was the first racing shoe that I ever felt like they knocked Nike off their perch. The Asics Nova Blast version 2, a version that some people enjoyed, some people didn't. It's the version that I put the most miles in, got over 500 in that one, retired it. It could have gone on for more. Love, love, love that shoe. And the Brooks Hyperion Tempo, again, a bit like the Pegasus Turbo 2. That was a game changer when I got that shoe. We'll go into reasons why shortly as to that one has not made the top 5. Let's get straight into this list. In no particular order, the Asics Nova Blast version 1. I think a lot of you could have predicted this. In fact, I think a lot of you are going to be able to predict a few of these. I'd love to hear in the comments how many you managed to guess of my top 5, especially if you've been following the channel for a while. So Nova Blast version 1 was really special to me. When the Evo Ride, the Glide Ride, and whatever the other racing shoe was that came out at the time, when they all got released, the Nova Blast slipped under the radar. Everyone on YouTube was reviewing those shoes. I took a punt on the Nova Blast version 1. And I am so glad I did not touch the Evo Ride, Glide Ride, or anything like that. The Nova Blast version 1 was absolutely incredible. It was soft, it was bouncy, it was durable, it was resilient. It could do absolutely everything. Now it's interesting because I think if I laced that shoe up today, I would probably look at my rotation and say I've got better shoes for certain things, but I literally did my easy runs, my long runs, my tempos, my intervals. I was doing 400-meter repeats on the track in that shoe. I even did a video back in the day comparing the Nova Blast version 1 to the Vaporfly version 1, and I was doing 400-meter reps, and I think I was maybe 1, 2, 3-ish seconds per rep slower in the Nova Blast than the Vaporfly. I was so impressed with how close it was to the Vaporfly and actually how good it feels. I mean, ultimately, when you slip those 2 shoes on, it's like chalk and cheese, but I really felt you could go well in the Nova Blast. And sadly, the Nova Blast version 1 was too much of a success. I think we see it with so many shoes. If a shoe does well, I think a brand instantly looks at it and goes, well, how can we make more money from this franchise? Fast forward 5-6 years and we've now got a ton of Blast shoes. I really do feel like they've nerfed the Nova Blast. You cannot compete with the foam that was in that Nova Blast version 1. It was soft, bouncy, responsive, but it was durable. Now you just do not get all of those 4 properties in a midsole from the Nova Blast. You can get soft and bouncy for a little bit. The version 5 was what I found to be the closest back to version 1. It felt so good, but it just went flat so quickly. Companies are tinkering with midsoles. They're not making them as durable. They're also splitting their range out. So of course, we've now got the Super Blast, we've got the Mega Blast, we've got the Sonic Blast. And so I really feel like the Nova Blast has been kind of pigeonholed a little bit more into that more easy and steady day shoe. And it's definitely lost its magic touch. But I will never forget how good that Nova Blast version 1 was. And moving on to the next one, just a reminder, these are in no particular order. I hold them in such high regard, all 5 of these, the Vaporfly version 1. So again, when the Vaporfly came out, I didn't touch it. I did not want to spend that much money on a super shoe. I actually went and bought the Hoka Carbon X, which was in my shout out list. And it was great to run in a shoe like that. Again, there was nothing that I tested like that, but every race I went to, everyone had these in green or pink or the Ekiden colorway. Those were the 3 ones that were released. And eventually I got my hands on the Valerian green or blue or whatever it was version when it was discounted over a year later, and it blew my mind. There was nothing better than that shoe. Absolutely incredible. Now, I'm sadly one of the people that never got to test the 4%. I had the original Zoom Fly, so the training partner to it. And again, I ran a marathon in that shoe. That was fantastic. I bought a second pair as well, put over 500 miles in the first pair, 200 or 300 in the second before I retired those. And that was the closest I got to testing the 4%. They were still good, but obviously not quite as fine-tuned in the performance area. So when I got the Vaporfly, it was mind-blowing. And again, this was one of those milestones in shoe technology that I remember so well. This is my second pair of Vaporflies. I'm hanging on to these for dear life. They've got about 90 miles in them, 95. I reckon they've got another 1 or 2 races left. I haven't laced them up for ages. I don't know what it's going to feel like now, having tested a lot of other super shoes. However, these things were an absolute game changer, and Nike really led the way to, I guess, what we're testing now. Rolling on to the third shoe in the list, the Brooks Hyperion Max. So this is why the Hyperion Tempo was not in this list. So the Tempo for me was an introduction into Brooks performance shoes, that nitrogen infused midsole. I bang on about it on the channel all the time. I'm definitely someone who prefers a slightly firmer but responsive midsole rather than softer. It just works well with me, I think, for my height and weight. I just get on with them and have done for such a long time. The Tempos, I bought 2 pairs of those, and again, durability was fantastic. Along comes the Max, and that levels things up, and that's why it's in my top 5 list. Once again, I got 2 pairs of those. I think the first pair was gifted by Brooks. The second pair I purchased with my own money, and they have been absolutely incredible over the years for that marathon training, that longer distance training, and providing for me potentially what could be the best performance shoe from a training perspective without a plate for those longer distances. Now, although things have changed slightly for me in the last year or so, where I'm using plates a little bit more but being a bit careful, I do really tend to find that I prefer using shoes without plates in them, and the Hyperion Max is just the epitome for me of a performance shoe without a plate. That is exactly what I need. It provides comfort in abundance, performance in abundance. The aggressive rocker at the end allows you to move swiftly. The midsole foam is absolutely spectacular, firm but responsive. What a great combination. And once again, I can easily get over 400 miles in those shoes. They've seen me through plenty of marathon training blocks, lots of double threshold sessions, and over the years they have just been top of the pile. The Tempo followed by the Max has been the absolute game changer for me, and I'm always on the lookout for a shoe like that to add to my training. And the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 makes the top 5 as well. There are a couple of reasons for this. This actually knocked the Elite out of the top 5, and this is why it took so long for me to think about this, because actually I prefer this shoe to the Elite. This is incredible. From a racing shoe perspective, this is the best shoe I've tested since the original Vaporfly. And now if you said to me and presented me a fresh pair of these or the Vaporfly version 1s, I can categorically say I would now go with these. Maybe it's because these are fresh in my memory. If I wound the clock back, maybe I prefer a fresh pair of Vaporfly version 1. But honestly, I prefer the less aggressive carbon plate scoop under the foot. Always found the Vaporfly, despite how incredible the performance was, it took 2 or 3 runs to kind of almost flatten out that feeling in the arch where it just raised under the foot. Never had that in this shoe. The scoop down here is perfect. It's aggressive. The foam from Puma this year has been absolutely spectacular. Now you might be wondering why the Fast R isn't in here. The Fast R Nitro Elite 3 is quite honestly the best super shoe that I have ever tested. It top trumps anything in terms of that super shoe feeling. However, it's just a bit restrictive for me in terms of how far I can take it. 5Ks and 10Ks seem to be a limit. Recently I ran a half marathon in it, blew my old time out the way. However, I really paid the price for it in my legs and hamstrings and glutes thereafter. It really does promote good form. If you don't have good form, you can really suffer in that shoe. It's not a shoe that I could be able to take for realistically a marathon. And if I was to take it for a half marathon again, I'd make sure I had a week off afterwards to fully recover. This is the best all-round super shoe and best value for money that I can recommend to anybody. And for me, it has been the best since that Vaporfly. PB'd in all the distances this year and Puma are onto a winner. I am scared to see what happens in the next version, because if they mess this up, I will be stocking up on old versions. And finally, the Adios Pro 3. This is my 4th pair of Pro 3s now, and I intend to keep topping up the collection. These are, quite frankly, probably the best training shoe that I've ever had. Now I hear you say, yes, they're a racing shoe. I agree, they are a racing shoe. I have raced in them once before. They're not aggressive enough for me to race in, but what this shoe offers for me in training is a 10 out of 10 experience. I say it time and time again in videos. I have premium super shoe midsole foam. I've got carbon rods that run through each metatarsal, making it feel so much more natural than a carbon plate. It's less aggressive. I never suffer any aches or pains in my Achilles, which I can do if I run in carbon plates too much. The only gripe I have with this shoe is the upper can be a little bit sloppy fitting, but when you get it locked in, it is incredible. I can get 500 miles out of this shoe, and I am now on my 2nd pair throughout a marathon training block. Last year I double thresholded, if that's a word, through a full pair of shoes. In terms of the summer and a marathon block, I just literally used a pair of Pro 3s. This time, this isn't the pair, but I have done exactly the same again. Got over 300 miles from the start of the summer to now in an Adios Pro 3, and this is going to potentially be my racing shoe for my upcoming marathon. And the question I ask myself is, if I lined up all my options at home for a training session with double threshold or with a long threshold session or an interval session, would I want to pick anything other than the Pro 3? No, is the honest answer. I've thought about this so much, and I'm lining up all the shoes that I've ever tested and gone, would I choose this over the Pro 3? No. Would I choose this? No. Would I choose this? No. I always come back to this shoe. I might have other shoes in for testing, but I always want to run in this shoe, and that is a sign of a good shoe. Now I know we've got the Pro 4, and they've already been out since January, was it? So I'm sure the Pro 5 is going to be on the horizon soon. I will be when these hit the outlet stores, which I know they're starting to, stocking up on these shoes. There's nothing better for my frame, my size. These work incredibly. So there we go. Those are my top 5 shoes of all time. Some incredible shoes that missed the list, but I think if I had a fresh pair of all of those shoes, I would be in absolute dreamland. I'm going to throw the question back to you guys. Have you got a top 5 shoes of all time? Have you got a top 3? Have you got a shoe, like I feel to the Pro 3, that you use in training all the time? It would be great to hear your thoughts down there. And if the future versions have ruined it, or if the future versions have got better, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on the topic. Please do drop a comment down below and share your thoughts as well. And speaking of shoes, I'll leave a couple of videos on screen. This one up here is why I didn't choose the Puma Farstar for my marathon. Again, going into more detail on that, as I mentioned earlier, up there. Or check out this video down here, my 8 most used shoes during this marathon training block. Check out that one, and hopefully I'll see you guys over on one of those.